Hey y'all, hey y'all, hey y'all. This is Coach Rose AJ coming to holla at y'all this morning. I'm Carnivore Girl for Life. Y'all, we have Miss Aimee Fields Perrin here in the studio to have a conversation. Notice y'all, I said studio. Okay. But Aimee is 69 years old. She will be 70 this summer. And y'all, she is showing us, whether we're carnivore, low carb, or the standard American diet, how to age gracefully and with wisdom, and that we can do it all, have it all, and still have our looks and our health as we go into our older years. So Miss Aimee lives in Maine with her dog. She's a mother of three and she has six grandchildren. She was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes, or as a type 1 diabetic, at 16 years old. She's been eating carnivore for like the last 5 years. And y'all, she is a coach. She is a coach. Okay. And she does currently does group coaching. All right, Miss Aimee, it's all about you, boo. I'm gonna mute myself and sip my coffee while we conversate.
Okay. All right. Hi, everybody. Thanks for having me, Rose. I've got, this is not coffee. I do drink decaf, but this is hot water, which is really my favorite. I save the decaf for when I'm on long trips and I have to drive for a long time. It keeps me awake. Or when I'm painting. I'm also an artist and I do small still lifes. But I wanted to start with my diet history, because I have been on a lot of diets. When I first was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes 54 years ago, it made me very conscious of food. And I started studying about food and nutrition because I wanted to figure it all out. And when I saw all the books I was reading talked about healing, like you could heal all these diseases. And I'm like, so why not try to heal type 1 diabetes? Even though it's said that you can't heal it. It's one of those diseases that cannot be healed. But I was determined. And what I want to go through is all the different major diets that I've been on and show you what I've learned from each diet. So with the diabetes in 1971, it made me aware of my food. And it also, back then, they don't do that now, but back then they said, okay, you just can't eat anything with sugar in it. So that's when I gave up sugar. So I haven't had any sugar since 1971. So that's my benefit there. But I also, the other benefit is that the doctors told me I could eat 6 slices of bread a day or potatoes and a 2,000 calorie diet with 6 carbohydrates, 6 bread exchanges is what they called it. And I knew that if I did their diet, I would be sick and fat. So I also knew that the medical profession knew nothing about nutrition. And I knew that at 16 years old. I'm not sure how I knew, but it made me cautiously skeptical of the medical profession, which in my experience was a good thing. Okay, so the next diet I went on was in 1977. After I graduated from college, I started reading nutrition books and I became a vegetarian thinking that that was going to be the best thing for me. Luckily, I wasn't vegan at the time. I did eat eggs and cheese and plenty of them. But what that taught me was that I started eating real food. So 1977, no more junk food, no more processed food, only real food. So that was a benefit of that diet. The next diet was when I found, the next one's not a diet. In 1995, while I was still, I would do stuff like take herbs and do research on different therapies. So I was going to go see this chiropractor, and she was famous for doing colonics and this certain kind of massage. I can't remember what it's called, lymphatic massage. So I wanted to go to this particular old school chiropractor woman, and she said, well, you're too sick for a colonic. I don't know why she said that, but that's what she said. But I'll do the massage, but I won't see you unless you stop taking all medication except for your insulin. And at the time, I had chronic headaches. I grew up with chronic headaches and had them my whole life. But she said I couldn't take any Advil, Tylenol, nothing. So I quit. So in 1995, I quit taking all pain medication of any kind, and I haven't taken it since. So that was a good benefit from that experience. So then in 1996, I finally found low carb, and I found Dr. Bernstein because at the time in 1996, after 25 years of type 1 diabetes, I had frozen shoulders, I had frozen hips, sore knees, and I could not, it took me like 30 seconds to get up out of a chair. It would take me a solid minute to get down on the floor to play with my kids. I was what I've seen called stiff man syndrome. That's what they called it. And I started researching in medical libraries because I thought I had a new disease. Well, I didn't. I read an article written by Dr. Richard K. Bernstein about his method for type 1 diabetes, and because he said that the frozen joints were from type 1 diabetes. In other words, they're from high blood sugars. So at the end of that article, I sent off for cassette tapes about his method. And the very next day, I know I'm old. I got the tapes and listened to them, and the very next day I went low carb and went from 1 shot a day to 5 shots a day, and completely changed my life. And when we're talking low carb, he only allowed 30 carbs a day, which is very little. But in that diet, the biggest thing for me, besides learning to control my blood sugars, was that I gave up all grains. And we, as carnivores, we know that grains are horrible for you. And so that was the big advantage to going very, very low carb, besides starches also. So I'm getting closer and closer to carnivore, even though I didn't become carnivore much later. Okay, so the next diet was 7 years later. And at the time, because I had been a vegetarian for so long, I was only eating chicken and turkey and fish because I believed that red meat was evil and white meat would save me. So, but I did, as soon as I started low carb, about 2 months after I started low carb, all my joint issues left. I was able to move just as fast as anybody else, and I became pretty well. I still had diabetes, but I was taking less at the time because I went low carb, but I got a lot healthier on it, and it was amazing. And at the time, there were books that you could read about low carb for everybody. There were several. There's a few about athletes. I can't really remember the title right now, but it's Stephen Finney and Volek. About the low carb diet and athletic performance. I don't remember the exact title, but it was big. And protein power I read at that time too. So I was kind of getting into the protein at that time. Okay, so the next diet was in 2003 because I heard about this raw vegan family, and the son had, I'm looking at my clock, the son was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes, and his mother put him on a raw vegan diet, and he never had to go on insulin. So I jumped at it. I started doing research about the raw vegan diet. It was very big in the early 2000s. And there were tons. I actually had 300 books. By the time it was over, I had 300 books on the raw vegan diet. I was pretty serious. I even started a raw vegan snack company called Aimee's Living Magic. We had tons of customers all over the world. I made all kind of crazy stuff, and I made 19 different flavors of raw chocolate. Um, it was a lot of fun. I did that for 5 years, and I did the raw vegan diet for 7 years. But at the time, I started getting sore joints again, and some of the people that were in the movement their health started to decline as well. People's had teeth problems, and I was having joint problems. Other people were having losing muscle tissue and things like that. So we all kind of changed at the same time. And
Can I ask you one thing, Miss Aimee?
Sure.
Okay, I see you got some skillets and cast iron skillets on your back wall, girl. But when you say raw vegan, I'm not trying to be funny here, but does that mean you're not sauteing, you're not steaming, you're not putting it in the oven, you just eating it raw? Literally.
Well, yes and no,
Please
because
elaborate.
okay, so the way you cook as a raw vegan is that you mash things up together using a lot of nuts and seeds, and you put it in a dehydrator. So I would make something like onion bread with lots of onions, sliced up onions and flax seeds and sunflower seeds, and mix it all up and pat it out and put it in a dehydrator for 2 days. And it would come out like a bread consistency. And it was probably my most popular product when I had my company. But things like that. And then I would soak and dehydrate nuts and then season them so they were delicious. I made a granola out of mostly almonds and goji berries and things like that.
That's a lot of work.
Oh, it was a lot of work, and
Yeah.
you didn't get quite enough money to make it work because I
Yeah.
was selling these things. So I would buy the stuff from all over the world and mix it up and dehydrate it and put a lot of electricity in it because those dehydrators ran in my house 24/7. And then I'd mail it out all over the world. So there was a lot of shipping being done, and not enough money to make money doing it. So it lasted for
Can I
5 years.
That's a
Sure.
long time in my book, a long time. Let me ask you one more thing. So there were no chemicals or anything in their emulsifiers to preserve it, right? So how long would a product last, like your bread or whatever you made?
Well, it was dried out, so it would last, a year. I did have to put an expiration date on it, and so we would usually just put about 1 year, because I had reports from people who said, I found some in the back in my cabinet, and I bought it last year sometimes. It was still delicious. So yeah, it would last a long time. And of course, with that diet, I ate, giant salads every day too, and sprouted buckwheat and stuff like that. But yeah, and I stayed on that diet for 7 years until our health suffered. So,
Okay, so
all
what was
right.
the next one?
The
Sorry about
next
that
diet, that's all
interruption.
right. So the next one, because it was around the time of a gas crisis and local foods were becoming kind of popular, my husband and I decided we would do keto, but we would do locavore keto. So for the next 8 years, all the food that I ate was from local farms. I finally got into eating red meat. I got this amazing butter, but from local farms. I got this amazing butter from a farmer in the next state over in New Hampshire that I can still get today. It was Jersey. It was raw, grass-fed, beautiful, bright yellow springtime butter, and eggs from farmers, and all of our vegetables from farmers. And so because I was eating low carb still, because I did all these diets after I found out about low carb, I did all the diets very low carb. Um, I didn't just throw that out the window when I started the next diet because I had to control my blood sugars. So I did keto for the next 8 years, and I did very well on it. My blood sugars were very easy to control on it. The food was very satisfying. I made a lot of fermented vegetables. I had a lot of fun with it. But in the back of my mind, there was always, but I wanted to heal. I wanted to figure out if I could get off of insulin and heal the type 1 diabetes. And even though the keto diet is great, it's not going to heal me any farther than I am. So that's when, oh, but what did I learn from that? Okay, I forgot about the raw vegan and what I learned. I had it written down. The raw vegan, what I learned was that's when I gave up seed oils. The only oil that you're allowed on the raw vegan diet is raw extra virgin olive oil. So that way back in 2003, I gave up seed oils, and that we know is a really good thing. All right, so in keto, that made me aware of ketosis, being in nutritional ketosis, and the benefits of being in ketosis for your brain. Well, not only your brain, your energy, but especially your brain. And that was what was important to me. So, but then my husband and I were on a trip. We were, he was a famous artist, and he taught workshops. So we would travel all over the country, all over the world. Not all over, but we did a couple of trips. We did Italy and Moscow, and I stayed carnivore on both of those trips. But we traveled, and so what do you do when you're in the car for a really long time? You listen to YouTube. And we started with keto because we were doing keto, and there wasn't that way back in 2018, there really wasn't much out there except for keto, except that the Sean Baker interview came up from Joe Rogan. And then, of course, the Michaela Peterson and Jordan Peterson interviews from Joe Rogan came up. And that was basically the only carnivore interviews on YouTube at the time. And my husband says, I'm starting tomorrow. And he did. But we were on a trip, and I was worried that I might have some severe reactions and I might get sick. And so I started the day we got home, which was November 12th, 2018. And I've been carnivore ever since. The thing with the carnivore diet, I am on just a little bit less insulin than I was on keto. I was hoping that my insulin requirements would go down a lot farther. What my carnivore diet usually is beef, butter, bacon, and eggs that I'm very happy with. It's very easy, but I'd love to be disciplined enough to stay on the lion diet and do beef and lamb. The lion diet is an all ruminant diet. And so that's the goal, is because the way I understand the lion diet is that you're avoiding anything that you might actually have an allergen to. So you give up eggs, you give up all dairy, because they do have allergens in them. So you're only eating ruminant meat. And some people consider type 1 diabetes as an autoimmune disease. So that's the lion diet is especially good for autoimmune diseases. So I did go on it back in 2020, July, August, and September for 3 solid months. And my insulin requirements went from about 12 units to only 6 units. It was great. I really wanted to stay on it, but I was missing eggs and bacon and decaf too much, and I was unable to stay on it.
I hear you,
Um,
girl. I hear
yeah.
you.
So I am pretty happy with the beef, butter, bacon, and eggs, although I'm thinking ahead that I might try lion again. Um, because now, 4 years later, I think that there's a lot more support on social media. And I really enjoy the carnivore groups on social media. We even have a type 1 diabetic carnivores social media. We have 2,000 type 1 diabetics on that Facebook group. So, and those guys are very helpful. So I would get more support now than I did back in 2020. Trying to think of what else do I need to. I'll say what happened on carnivore. Besides being able to lower my insulin, the floaters in my eyes went away, and I developed more gumption in life. And I think that I'm aging pretty well. Um, I don't really have time. Well, my husband died in 2021. He had colon cancer. It's a long story that I could get into, but it would take me an hour. But I thought about doing a YouTube video about it, but I haven't decided whether I should or shouldn't. But I think it might be interesting if I decided to. But um, what else can I? What, do you have any questions?
So, what I do want to ask you is that your health has been impacted by your type 1 diabetes since you were 16. And you had this intuitive or this knowing not to trust doctors in general, and you wanted to heal. That's what I'm hearing your main theme being. But you go on, you get married, you have a family, you have this company, you try all sorts of diets and whatnot. But you also have a family. How was your family impacted by your type 1 diabetes as far as the nutritional protocol? Did they eat differently than you? And then, Miss Aimee, we do have a few minutes if you would like to talk about your husband as well. We have time. We have a few minutes.
Um, okay. So, um, when my kids were little, I would fix myself one meal and I would fix the rest of the family a different meal. And there was some overlap. Then when I went low carb, well, look, before I went low carb, I was so sick that my family was greatly affected by it. When we would sit and watch TV in the evening, I could not hold my head up. My head would just droop to one side. I couldn't play with my kids. They did not mind me going on the low carb diet because I was also very irritable before I found low carb because my blood sugars would go up and down and up and down, and it makes you really irritable. And so when I switched to low carb and my blood sugars were more even, my family was ecstatic. They were so happy. And there was always some overlap food. Like I could eat the vegetables and the protein, and they would eat that, but they would eat, you know, potatoes or rice or something with theirs that I didn't eat. So it was never it wasn't a problem. And they were just happy that their mother was happy and healthier. And I could run and play and exercise when I couldn't before. So, yeah.
Okay. Okay. So you also said that you read a lot, you researched a lot, and you had over X amount of books when you were raw vegan, and this was obviously before, Google, the search engines, and all that good stuff.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
What would be your favorite read today if you had a book to pull up and say, here's a hard copy that I would recommend? What would be your favorite book?
Well, so when I decided that I didn't want to be raw vegan anymore, it was a huge step because I had been vegan and I really believed in it. So I had to read to educate myself before I could start eating meat. The first book I read was by Weston A. Price, let's see, Nutrition and Physical Degeneration by Weston A. Price. Then I read The Vegetarian Myth by Lierre Keith. By that time, Big Fat Surprise by Nina Teschholz had come out. Those are the main ones that helped me transition. And actually, the fact that helped me transition, and I don't remember where I read this. I also read Michael Pollan's book, Omnivore's Dilemma. That was an interesting read. So the thing that convinced me that it was okay to eat meat was when I learned that when they plow a field, there's so many animals that are slaughtered by the plow that it doesn't even compare to eating a piece of red meat. There's no comparison because it's a slaughter out there. They aren't, guided through a funnel and killed and you get lots of meat to eat like a cow is. These are little families of mice and possum and fox and squirrels and bunnies were being slaughtered in fields just to grow vegetables. And besides the fact that when cows are grazed correctly, they're building the soil. When vegetables are grown in a field, they are destroying the soil. So that was important to me.
Okay. Well, thank you for those couple of books and your summaries and whatnot. I am curious though about one thing. If in 3 words you could give words of wisdom to someone, whether they are type 1 diabetic or whether they're somebody that's 60 years old or even 16 years old, they're trying to decide whether to remain the same or to try the carnivore, even ketogenic or low carb diet, what would 3 words be that you could give them to encourage them?
Oh, it's hard to narrow it down. I keep getting 3
Yeah.
over here and 3 over here and 3 over here and 3 over
Well,
here.
give us the 9 or 12
Go
words, sister.
go for it. Trust yourself and do your research.
Yes, ma'am. All right, Miss Aimee Fields Perrin, thank you so much for being with me today and having this conversation. Please tell the audience where they can find you on social media as well as your website, and I'll include it in the show notes, of course.
All right. So I'm very active on Instagram and Facebook, and you could message me on both of those. And it's just Aimee Fields Perrin. It's AIMEEFIELDSPERRIN. And that's also my website, aimeefieldsperrin.com. And then my YouTube channel is Brisket Boomers, which I specifically started that for people of my age, boomers' ages, so that they can find out about carnivore and how to do it and how to, yeah. I mean, we're a special tribe, I think.
Yes, yes. Thank you so much. All right, guys, y'all heard it here first. Well, not really. So if you Google Miss Aimee Fields Perrin in YouTube or on the internet, you'll come up with all her videos, all her literature, and all that good stuff. But thank you for being with us today. And until next Thursday, we'll holla soon. Bye bye.
Thank you. Bye bye.